Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Tiffany Benson, one part of Team Benson, and today we're going to talk about something I'm pretty passionate about when it comes to my garden. It is my composting little worms. Now guys, before I talk to you guys about feeding it, how I take care of my worms and where I have my worms at and all those juicy details, I want to show you guys why I'm so passionate, because I want to show you what it does to my in-ground beds and also to my pots too. Alright guys, so we're going to sneak in here. We are underneath the broccoli and I just want to show you just how nice my soil is. So this, did you guys ever think that you could have a black gold in Arizona? Sorry for how bright it is outside today, guys. It's like the sun sets, but it wants to be like super bright upon setting. Now, many of you guys might ask how I get soil that's going to be light and fluffy and just really dark black like that, full of worm castings. And it is because I have an in-ground worm bin. Now, with my in-ground worm bin, it is connected to my big L-shaped bed, but I still get to use all of the worms in other places of my garden. Everywhere has worms in my garden, from the pots to the bed on top of the patio to the herb bed. If you dig around in any of my beds, the worms are there. And how I get them there is through the in-ground worm bin. I have just a little system set up to where every year when I go to get castings, I just scoop them out and sprinkle them around the other beds. So my in-ground worm bed is a super easy system. All it is some chicken wire that connects the two beds together. That way the worms can easily go from this little bin all the way throughout the big beds. And as you guys know, this bed connected to the worm bin, the closest one to it, is one of my most prolific beds I have. It does really well, in part because this is where the worms live. And then I just have a lid there in order to cover it at all times. Now guys, I just put this potting soil in here because I have been waiting to use this and I needed to use the pot that was in there. But this potting soil being this nice and dark with little to no roots, I mean these are probably like the most of roots that was left in this pot, which I did not pull the roots out, I just left for the worms. But they were like this because of the amount of worms that were in the pot. Since I didn't have any place to put them because I wasn't ready to start putting worm castings in my beds, I just threw them in here for now. But right now I'm gonna dig a couple of them out and then show you how I feed the worms and then what I'm gonna do with this. So having an in-ground worm bin is really simple. All you literally have to do is just every now and then, which is probably about once every 2 weeks when I feed my worms, is I take just some eggshells, I take any cuts of greens or vegetables, anything like that. Nothing spicy. They do not like spicy food. They're not a big fan. And I wouldn't put fruit or citrus fruit in there either. Because that can attract some things, and they don't like oranges, so like citrus fruits or like limes. And then I also take coffee grounds. And sometimes I also take shredded paper as well and then throw in there. And all I do is just throw in all that, and then I put a layer of soil. Usually some soil that I have in like an old pot or anything like that that I'm letting compost. That way then I can bury all of this so that then nothing comes to dig it up, and so that the worms can go in and eat it and still be in dirt. Now, one of the biggest questions I get is during the summer, how do I protect the worms when it gets so hot? Because Arizona can sometimes reach 120 degrees, sometimes 125 if we're lucky. Actually not. Nobody likes it when it's 125. And what I do during the summer is I freeze in a baggie just leaves that we're not using. Or at the end of the summer when I'm pulling up a lot of spent leaves like that bok choy that now doesn't taste so great, I will be taking all of those leaves, washing them, putting them in a bag, and I will be freezing it. So then in the middle of the summer I'll just put that whole block of iced lettuce in there, cover it with some soil, water it down, and then let that whole block just kind of melt. And then every now and then too, usually like once every 2 days, I'll just take some ice and put inside on the top and let the ice just kind of melt. But I keep the lid over it, and when I'm putting up my shade cloth, the shade cloth is also over it too as well, and that protects them. That gives it some protection since, you know, obviously the beds get protection because they have the shade cloth and they also have the plants with the leaves that are over top of it. So now I just have an empty pot and a shovel, and we're gonna go and dig out the first couple of layers, which is basically that potting soil of dirt. And that is gonna be full of worm castings, which is why it's so dark and so crumbly, because it's basically a big pile of worm poop. And I'm gonna use that in order to put on top of some of my pots so that then I can get the worms back in there. All right guys, with that wood chip, and let's dig around in here, and as you can see, look at that. They are already wiggling around. Don't want to stab them. I'm just gonna try and scoop it a little bit and put it into the pot. Now I tried just to get the top layer so I'm not removing the worms. I pretty much just want the worm castings. And as you can see, they are really, really in here. They are loving every part of this worm bin. So I think that's about enough. I'm just gonna take these and go top off the pots. So since I just disturbed them, instead of putting these in the pots real quick, I'm just gonna feed them and then scoop the dirt back over them so that they can not be so freaked out. So this smells delicious. You know, I used to be a dog mom. Now I'm a worm mom. Okay, so I dug a little well and I popped them in there, and now I'm just gonna take some old soil out of one of the pots and just cover it. This will make sure that any worms that are in there in that old soil pot are now back with its friends. So I'm just gonna cover it as much as I can, and then just put the lid right back over it. Okay, so now I'm gonna take this little pot of greatness and I'm going to go put it on some of the tomato plants that need a little boost, and the new one. So this is the newest tomato plant. I'm gonna try and do this one-handed without spilling anybody or sending anybody to their deaths. And as you can see, there's a little worm right there. But I'm just gonna go ahead and scoop and put it just over here. Now the goal is just to give this a little bit of worm castings and then also put a few worms in there so that they can keep the soil healthy. Then I'm just going to put some mulch on top of this. So now that's it. It has a new plant, some fresh soil, some compost, some worms, and some mulch, and now it's ready for 120 degrees. Hopefully not. Hopefully that's a joke. Alright guys, so let's get out of the sun. It was really bright. So that is all that I do. Now I'm going to do that to all of my beds and my pots that don't have any worm connection to it. So basically everything but this big L. I'll just take a little bit of scoop out of there and then put on there on top of the pots and all those different things. Now you don't want to put things that are already composting or still not yet composted, so I'm not going to take any of like the big scoops of leaves that are dead and dying and put those in there. Now I do in the fall do something different for my beds for the worms, so you guys will have to wait and see what I do then, or just watch some of my older videos. But I hope that helps you answer you guys with questions about how do I take care of my worm bin and how do I take care of my worm bin during the summer. Now I have red wiggler worms. It's so hot in Arizona that like a nice little earthworm is not going to survive here. Plus our dirt is so hard and so compacted that those red wrigglers have done some amazing work in my beds. They have literally made it to where I've gone from my native soil where I couldn't dig into to now I can plant things super deep down in these beds because the worms have continued to kind of dig down in there, and they've had plenty of room and plenty of food to be nice and strong. So make sure you guys are getting yourself some worms. If you need good composting worms, red wigglers are where it's at. It's like having a little pig in your small space garden because they'll literally eat every like scrap that you have in the kitchen, minus citrus and jalapenos. Don't do that. And don't do melons because they'll get dug up. Just don't do that. We're in the city, guys. But until next time, make sure you guys grow yourselves a garden, because even a small space will provide you with tons of food. Bye, guys.